Tell me briefly now, while I've been here with the brandy, you have been where?
Well, I spent some time in a fishing village and then I wandered a bit, and then a few weeks ago I found myself in Gilder, and the talk there was of the coming wedding and perhaps a coming war, and I remembered Buttercup when I carried her up the cliffs of insanity. She was so pretty and soft, and I had never been so near perfume before that I thought it might be nice to see her wedding celebration. So I came here, but my money was gone, and then they were forming a brute squad and they needed giants, and I went to apply and they beat me with clubs to see if I was strong enough, and when the clubs broke they decided I was. I've been a brute first class all this past week. It's very good pay.
Inigo nodded. All right, again, and this time please be brief. From the beginning, the man in black, did he get by you?
Yes, fairly too. Strength against strength. I was too slow and out of practice.
Then it was he that killed Vizzini?
That is my belief.
Did he use his sword or his strength?
Fezzik tried to remember. There weren't any sword wounds, and Vizzini didn't seem broken. There were just these two goblets, and Vizzini dead. Poison is my guess.
Why would Vizzini take poison?
Fezzik hadn't the least idea.
But he was definitely dead?
Fezzik was positive.
Inigo began to pace the kitchen, his movements quick and sharp, the way his movements were before. All right, Vizzini is dead. Enough of that. Tell me briefly, where is the six-finger Rugen so I may kill him?
Well, that might not be so easy, Inigo, because the Count is with the Prince, and the Prince is in his castle, and he has pledged not to leave it till after his wedding, for he fears another attack from Gilder. And all the entrances but the main one are sealed for safety, and the main doors are guarded by 20 men.
Inigo said. If you fought 5 and I fenced 5, that would mean 10 gone, which would be bad because that would also mean 10 left and they would kill us. But if you should take 6 and I took 8, that would mean 14 beaten, which would not be as bad, but still bad enough since the 6 remaining would kill us. And now he whirled on Fezzik. How many could you handle at the most?
Well, some of them are from the brute squad, so I don't think more than 8.
Leaving me 12, which is not impossible, but not the best way to spend your first evening after 3 months on brandy. And suddenly Inigo's body sagged and his eyes, bright a moment ago, were now wet with moisture.
What has happened? Fezzik cried.
Oh, my friend, I need Vizzini. I am not a planner. I follow. Tell me what to do, and no man alive will do it better. But my mind is like fine wine. It travels poorly. I go from thought to thought, but not with logic, and I forget things. And help me, Fezzik. What am I to do?
Fezzik wanted to cry now, too. I'm the stupidest fellow that was ever born. You know that. I couldn't remember to come back here even after you made up that special lovely rhyme for me.
I need Vizzini.
But Vizzini is dead.
And then Inigo was up again, blazing about the kitchen, and for the first time his fingers were snapping with excitement. I don't need Vizzini. I need his master. I need the man in black. Look, he bested me with steel, my greatness. He bested you with strength, yours. He must have outplanned and outthought Vizzini, and he will tell me how to break through the castle and kill the six-fingered beast. If you have the least notion where the man in black is at the moment, relate quickly the answer.
He sails the 7 seas with the dread pirate Roberts.
Why would he do a thing like that?
Because he is a sailor for the dread pirate Roberts.
A sailor? A common sailor? A common ordinary seaman bests a great Inigo Montoya with a sword? Inconceivable! He must be the dread pirate Roberts. Otherwise it makes no sense.
In any event, he is sailing far away. Count Rugen says so, and the prince himself gave the order. The prince wants no pirates around, what with all the trouble he's having with Gilder. Remember, they kidnapped the princess once. They might try...
Fezzik, we kidnapped the princess once. You never were strong on memory, but even you should recall that we put the Gilder uniform pieces under the princess's saddle. Vizzini did it because he was under orders to do it. Someone wanted Gilder to look guilty, and who but a noble would want that? And what noble more than the war-loving prince himself? We never knew who hired Vizzini. I guess Humperdinck. And as for the Count's word on the man in black's whereabouts, since the Count is the same man who slaughtered my father, we can rest assured he is certainly a terrific fellow. He started for the door. Come, we have much to do. Fezzik followed him through the darkening streets of the thieves' quarter.
You'll explain things to me as we go along? Fezzik asked.
I'll explain them to you now.
His blade-like body knifed on through the quiet streets, Fezzik hurrying alongside.
A. I need to reach Count Rugen to at last avenge my father. B. I cannot plan on how to reach Count Rugen. C. Vizzini could have planned it for me, but C prime, Vizzini is unavailable, however. D. The man in black outplanned Vizzini, so therefore E. The man in black can get me to Count Rugen.
But I told you Humperdinck, after he captured him, gave orders for all to hear that the man in black was to be returned safely to his ship. Everyone in Florin knows this to be true.
A. Prince Humperdinck had some plans to kill his fiancée and hired us to carry them out. But B, the man in black ruined Prince Humperdinck's plans. However, eventually C, Prince Humperdinck managed to capture the man in black, and as everybody in all of Florin City also knows, Prince Humperdinck has a terrible temper. So therefore D, if a man has a terrible temper, what could be more fun than losing it against the very fellow who spoiled your plans to kill your fiancée? They had reached the thieves' quarter wall now. Inigo jumped on Fezzik's shoulders, and Fezzik started to climb. Conclusion 1. Inigo continued, not missing a beat. Since the prince is in Florin City, taking out his temper on the man in black must also be in Florin City. Conclusion 2. The man in black must not be too happy with his present situation. Conclusion 3. I am in Florin City and need a planner to avenge my father, while he is in Florin City and needs a rescuer to salvage his future. And when people have equal needs of each other, conclusion 4 and final, deals are made. Fezzik reached the top of the wall and started carefully climbing down the other side.
I understand everything, he said.
You understand nothing, but it really doesn't matter, since what you meant is you're glad to see me, just as I'm glad to see you, because no more loneliness.
That's what I mean, said Fezzik.
It was dusk when they began their search blindly through all of Florin City. Dusk, a day before the wedding. Count Rugen was about to begin his nightly experiments at that dusk, gathering up his notebooks from his room, filled with all his jottings. 5 levels underground, behind the high castle walls, locked and chained and silent, Wesley waited beside the machine. In a way, he still looked like Wesley, except, of course, that he had been broken. 20 years of his life had been sucked away. 20 were left. Pain was anticipation. Soon the Count would come again, against any wishes he had left. Wesley went on crying. It was dusk when Buttercup went to see the prince. She knocked loudly, waited, knocked again. She could hear him shouting inside, and if it had not been so important, she would have never knocked the third time. But she did, and the door was yanked open, and the look of anger on his face immediately changed to the sweetest smile.
"Beloved," he said, "come in. A moment more is all I need."
And he turned back to Yellen.
"Look at her, Yellen, my bride-to-be. Has any man ever been so blessed?"
Yellen shook his head.
"Am I wrong, do you think, to go to any lengths then to protect her?"
Yellen shook his head again. The prince was driving him crazy with his stories of the Gilder infiltration. Yellen had every spy he'd ever used working day and night, and not one of them had come up with anything about Gilder. And yet the prince insisted. Inwardly, Yellen sighed. It was beyond him. He was simply an enforcer, not a prince. In fact, the only remotely disturbing news he'd heard since he'd closed the thieves' quarter that morning was within the hour, when someone told him a rumor that the ship of the dread pirate Roberts had perhaps been sailing all the way into Florin Channel itself. But such a thing, Yellen knew from long experience, was simply a rumor.
"I tell you, they are everywhere, these Gilders, and since you seem unable to stop them, Yellen, I wish to change some plans. All the gates have been sealed to my castle except the front one, yes?" "Yes, and 20 men guard it."
"Add 80 more. I want 100 men. Clear?"
100 men it will be, every brute available."
"Inside the castle, I'm quite safe. I have my own supplies, food, stables enough. As long as they cannot get at me, I will survive. These, then, are the new and final plans. Jot them down.
All 500th anniversary arrangements are cancelled until after the wedding. The wedding is tomorrow at sunset. My bride and I will ride my whites to the Florida Channel, surrounded by all your enforcers. There we will board a ship and begin our long-awaited honeymoon, surrounded by every ship in the Florin Armada. Every ship but 4, Buttercup corrected. He blinked at her a moment in silence. Then he said, blowing her a kiss, but discreetly so Yellen couldn't see, "Yes, how forgetful I am. Every ship but 4. He turned back to Yellen. But in his blink, in that following silence, Buttercup had seen it all. These ships will stay with us until I deem it safe to release them. Of course, Gilder could attack then, but that is a chance we must risk. Let me think if there's anything else." The prince loved giving orders, especially the kind he knew would never need carrying out. Also, Yellen was a slow jotter, and that only added to the fun. "Excused," the prince said finally. With a bow, Yellen was gone. "The 4 ships were never sent," Buttercup said, when they were alone. "Don't bother lying to me anymore." "Whatever was done for your own good, sweet pudding." "Somehow I do not think so." "Yeah, you're nervous, I'm nervous. We're getting married tomorrow. We've got a right to be nervous." "You couldn't be more wrong, you know. I'm very calm." And in truth, she did seem that way. "It doesn't matter whether you sent the ships or not. Wesley will come for me. There is a God, I know that, and there is love, I know that too. So Wesley will save me." "You're a silly girl. Now go to your room." "Yes, I am a silly girl, and yes, again, I will go to my room. And you are a coward with a heart filled with nothing but fear." The prince had to laugh. "The greatest hunter in the world, and you say I am a coward?" I do indeed. I'm getting much smarter as I age. I say you are a coward, and you are. I think you only hunt to reassure yourself that you are not what you are, the weakest thing to ever walk the earth. He will come for me, and then we will be gone, and you will be helpless for all your hunting, because Wesley and I are joined by the bond of love, and you cannot track that, not with 1,000 bloodhounds, and you cannot break it, not with 1,000 swords. Humperdinck screamed toward her then, ripping at her autumn hair, yanking her from her feet and down the long, curving corridor to her room, where he tore that door open and threw her inside and locked her there and started running for the underground entrance to the Zoo of Death. My father stopped reading. "Go on," I said. "Lost my place," he said, and I waited there, still weak with pneumonia and wet with fear, until he started reading again. "Inigo allowed Fezzik to open the door." "Hey," I said, "hold it, that's not right, you skipped." And then I quick caught my tongue because we just had that scene where I got all upset about Buttercup marrying Humperdinck when I'd accused him of skipping, and I didn't want a repeat of that. "Daddy," I said, I don't mean anything, but wasn't the prince sort of running toward the zoo, and then the next thing you said was about Inigo, and maybe, shouldn't there be a page or like that in between?" My father started to close the book. I'm not fighting. Please, don't close it." "It is not for that," he said, and then he looked at me for a long time. "Billy," he said. He almost never called me that. I loved it when he did. Anybody else, I hated it, but when my father did it, I don't know. I just melted. "Billy, do you trust me?" "What's that?" "Of course I do." "Billy, you got pneumonia. You're taking this book very serious. I know because we already fought once about it." "I'm not fighting anymore." "Listen to me. I never lied to you yet, did I?" "Okay, trust me. I don't want to read you the rest of the chapter, and I want you to say it's all right." "Why? What happens in the rest of the chapter?" "If I tell you, I could accomplish the same by reading. Just say okay." I can't say that until I know what happens." "But..." "Tell me what happens, and I'll tell you if it's okay, and I promise. If I don't want to hear it, you can skip on to Inigo." "You won't do me this favor." "I'll sneak out of bed when you're asleep. I don't care where you hide the book. I'll find it, and I'll read the rest of the chapter myself, so you might as well tell me." "Billy, please." I gotcha. You might as well admit it." My father sighed this terrible sound. I knew I had him beaten then. "Wesley dies," my father said. I said, "What do you mean Wesley dies? You mean dies?" My father nodded. "Prince Humperdinck kills him." "He's only faking though, right?"
My father shook his head, closed the book all the way. Ah, See, even on YouTube, I can't say school in appropriate language. I'm sorry, my father said. I'll leave you alone. And he left me. Who gets Humperdinck? I screamed after him. He stopped in the hall. I don't understand. Who kills Prince Humperdinck at the end? Somebody's got to get him. Is it Fezzik? Who? Nobody kills him. He lives. You mean he wins, Daddy? Jesus, what did you read me this thing for? And I buried my head in my pillow, and I never cried like that again, not once to this day. I could feel almost my heart emptying into my pillow. I guess the most amazing thing about crying, though, is when you're in it, you think it'll go on forever, but it never really lasts half of what you think. Not in terms of real time. In terms of real emotions, it's worse than you think, but not by the clock. When my father came back, it couldn't have been even an hour later. So, he said, shall we go on tonight or not? Shoot, I told him. Eyes dry, no catch in my throat, nothing. Fire when ready. With Inigo? Let's hear the murder, I said. I knew I wasn't about to bawl again. Like Buttercup's, my heart was now a secret garden, and the walls were very high.